Three areas of participant-related biases in psych research. Three areas that we discussed a little bit yesterday. Ms. Maddie, you go on. Age, right? Because most research is conducted, or a lot of it's conducted where? College campuses, right? And so that would sometimes, because of the accessibility of those participants, narrow it down to individuals that are college age between 18 and 25 years of age. Okay? What about another one? Ms. Bardwell? Gender, very good. So over the course of the 20th century, they had a system in place where they would identify it as female and not necessarily male, and that would project the idea that males were the norm and females were not the norm. So they don't do that anymore. Thank goodness. And another one, Job?
Socioeconomic.
Right, college campuses likely to have a higher income or come from a higher income background. Others, Ms. Reed? Race, changing racial demographics in the United States, and so we have to change the representative samples that we have in psych research. Got another one, Ms. Hack? Education level. If you're going to be on a college campus, you're likely to have more of a higher education level than those that are not on college campuses. Number two, today, the majority of psych degrees are awarded to who, Ms. Hoffman? Whites is probably correct. I guess if you look at numbers wise, I'm looking for, I probably should say males or females here. You want to guess again? It's females. Did I mention this yesterday in class? All right. So the last statistics that I heard was about 65% of all graduate degrees are given to females, and I think it's actually higher now. That was a few years ago. I think it's getting up close to 70%, right? So that's an abnormal ratio. You can see the influx of females in the profession of psychology. Anybody have any questions about our bell work today? Nope. All right, let's go ahead and take our bell work quiz. Go ahead and clear everything out of your Chromebook. Bring one tab to the front, get rid of the others, especially your bell work. Put off to the side. Alright, go to the home tab, click refresh, and then scroll down the bottom, got contact information down there. Take a few moments, you got 5 questions. Once you finish the 5 questions, go ahead and put your lid down and get your word of the day out. Yeah. Go ahead and log out, log back in. Try that. Hey, we're taking our bell work. It's on the contact information down the bottom of the tab. Again, once you're finished, let's go ahead and put a lid down and you can get your word of the day on. So write down your synonyms and antonyms. Alright, for our synonyms, you got insight, agitate, antonyms, calm, if the dictator thinks that you are trying to foment turmoil in order to start rebellion, have you executed on national television. Anybody know what historical event this is referencing to? It says to the Bastille. You know what that would be? Miss Nora? No? It's the French Revolution, right? You remember the guillotine separated people's heads from the rest of their bodies to undermine the authority of those in the revolutionaries? The Bastille is a large building in Paris, prison/armory, and so the revolutionaries needed the gunpowder and other equipment that was there to fuel the revolution. So they have a Bastille Day in France because it's kind of like their Independence Day. One more synonym: incite, agitate, and Zach? Instigate. Instigate. Instigate's a good one. Instigate. We got part of speech. Miss Emily? Noun's a good guess. I'm guessing. Verb is correct. Yep. Moments, we don't use it all that often. It is a challenge there. Antonyms, think about a crying baby. Maybe that helps to come up with an antonyms. Garrett?
Tranquilize?
Okay.
Not for baby, but like
Yeah, you're right to have children. Maybe take it away from you. You got one more, Austin? Was that? Halt? Yep. You guys need to work with horses rather than children. To halt. Alright, our sentence context today is the placebo pill. I'm going to show you a quick video, and then I'm going to read you a little bit about an article. Let's see. On the placebo. So I got to make some copies as well. So you watch this. You can make copies. I'll be back in just a second, and then I'll read a little bit of that article. So make sure you're paying attention here if you would.
In 1996, 56 volunteers took part in a study to test a new painkiller called Trivaricaine. On each subject, one index finger was covered in the new painkiller, while the other remained untouched. Then, both were squeezed in painful clamps. The subjects reported that the treated finger hurt less than the untreated one. This shouldn't be surprising, except Trivaricaine wasn't actually a painkiller, just a fake concoction with no pain-easing properties at all. What made the students so sure this dummy drug had worked? The answer lies in the placebo effect, an unexplained phenomenon wherein drugs, treatments, and therapies that aren't supposed to have an effect and are often fake miraculously make people feel better. Doctors have used the term placebo since the 1700s, when they realized the power of fake drugs to improve people's symptoms. These were administered when proper drugs weren't available, or if someone imagined they were ill. In fact, the word placebo means "I shall please" in Latin, hinting at a history of placating troubled patients. Placebos had to mimic the real treatments in order to be convincing, so they took the form of sugar pills, water-filled injections, and even sham surgeries. Soon, doctors realized that duping people in this way had another use, in clinical trials. By the 1950s, researchers were using placebos as a standard tool to test new treatments. To evaluate a new drug, for instance, half the patients in a trial might receive the real pill. The other half would get a placebo that looked the same. Since patients wouldn't know whether they'd received the real thing or a dud, the results wouldn't be biased, researchers believed. Then, if the new drug showed a significant benefit compared to the placebo, it was proved effective. Nowadays, it's less common to use placebos this way because of ethical concerns. If it's possible to compare a new drug against an older version, or another existing drug, that's preferable to simply giving someone no treatment at all, especially if they have a serious ailment. In these cases, placebos are often used as a control to fine-tune the trial, so that the effects of the new versus the old or alternative drug can be precisely compared. But of course, we know that placebos exert their own influence too. Thanks to the placebo effect, patients have experienced relief from a range of ailments, including heart problems, asthma, and severe pain, even though all they received was a fake drug or sham surgery. We're still trying to understand how. Some believe that instead of being real, the placebo effect is merely confused with other factors, like patients trying to please doctors by falsely reporting improvements. On the other hand, researchers think that if a person believes a fake treatment is real, their expectations of recovery actually do trigger physiological factors that improve their symptoms. Placebos seem to be capable of causing measurable change in blood pressure, heart rate, and the release of pain-reducing chemicals like endorphins. That explains why subjects in pain studies often say placebos ease their discomfort. Placebos may even reduce levels of stress hormones like adrenaline, which can slow the harmful effects of an ailment. So shouldn't we celebrate the placebo's bizarre benefits? Not necessarily. If somebody believes a fake treatment has cured them, they may miss out on drugs or therapies that are proven to work. Plus, the positive effects may fade over time, and often do. Placebos also cloud clinical results, making scientists even more motivated to discover how they wield such power over us. Despite everything we know about the human body, there are still some strange and enduring mysteries, like the placebo effect. So what other undiscovered marvels might we contain? It's easy to investigate the world around us and forget that one of its most fascinating subjects lies right behind our eyes.
I want to share with you a short story before I read a few paragraphs of the article. A common example for the placebo effect is a story about an experiment quite a few years ago before they had ethical guidelines. And so they had an experimental surgery that they were putting forth, and it was on trying to help people with had chest pain, that were experiencing chest pain. So they had 10 subjects in this research, and they took 5 of them, and they performed the experimental surgery. They took the other 5, and then they opened them up, and then just hung around for a while, did nothing, closed them back up, and then they told them that they had the experimental surgery. Okay? They waited a few weeks, and then they brought the subject back in, and then they did a number of tests. Who performed better on those tests? The ones that actually got the surgery, or the ones that were told that they got the surgery? Take a guess, Ms. Reed. Yep, the ones that were told, they performed better. Okay. Now again, this violates some of the ethical guidelines that we would have in place today, because it's just dangerous to do that kind of research there. The health of those patients is at risk. But it shows you the power of the brain. Like it mentioned, it says the brain, because of our expectation, changes and affects the neurotransmitters that our body produces. For example, like dopamine, serotonin, and all those other good things. Our body starts to produce those things just because our brain thinks that we're actually getting exposed to it. Okay? There's one other concept that I came across yesterday. It's called the John Henry effect. You guys ever heard of John Henry, the story, the children's story? He had a competition with a machine. He wanted to, beat the machine. He's a railway worker and trying to. Nobody's ever heard of John Henry? You guys need to go back and read John Henry. Good story. Okay. Anyway, the idea with experiment and research is that if you're in the control group and you realize that you're in the control group, sometimes you increase your level of motivation. You're like, I'm not getting the pill. I'm going to show those guys, right? That I can perform better than even them that get the pill. So it increases your ability to, you're more motivated to get better that way, okay? All right, let me read a couple paragraphs of this. It kind of differs from their approach. It's kind of negative here towards the placebo and how it's used today. This one's a bit more positive, okay? It says the placebo's new power, the emergence of the honest placebo, and what it says about healing in America. For over 20 years, Linda Buonanno lived in fear that her irritable bowel syndrome would suddenly interrupt her daily routine with frequent trips to the bathroom and unbearable cramping. Buonanno, now a 71-year-old medical assistant and hairdresser from Massachusetts, tried everything from drugs to daily free diets. Nothing worked. She remembers a particularly tough period over 10 years ago when she was working on the factory floor of a medical device company for up to 10 hours a day, 6 days a week. When an IBS episode would strike, her coworkers would have to cover for her as she huddled in the corner, keeled over in pain. If she wanted to go dancing with her friends at the local club on the weekends, Buonanno would have to stop eating on Friday so that there wouldn't be anything in her system to interrupt her plans. It was a horrible way to live, she says. One day in 2009, she saw a TV ad looking for people with IBS to control or to enroll in a study. She signed up and was thrilled when she was among about 80 people selected to take part in the first of its kind clinical trial. But when she found out what kind of treatment she'd be receiving, Buonanno felt deflated. A placebo pill. The doctors told her that there were no active ingredients in the pills, and the word placebo was labeled clearly on the bottle. She felt she'd gotten her hopes up for nothing. 3 weeks later, after taking the pill twice daily, Buonanno, symptom-free. She had never gone so long without an attack. I didn't have a clue what was going on, she said. I still don't. The medical community has been aware of the placebo effect, a phenomenon in which the non-therapeutic treatment, such as a sham pill, improves a patient's physical condition for centuries. But Ted Ketchup, a professor of medicine at Harvard Medical School and one of the leading researchers on the placebo effect, wanted to take his research further. He was tired of letting people in his studies think that they were taking a real therapy and then watching what happened. Instead, he wondered, what if he was honest? His Harvard colleagues told Ketchup that he was crazy, that letting people in a clinical trial know that they were taking a placebo would defeat
May I have your attention? Would any seniors who have not had their picture taken this morning please report to the library at this time? The rest of the seniors who have not had their picture taken, please report to the library.
Nevertheless, in 2009, the university's teaching hospital, Beth Israel Deaconess Medical Center, launched the first open-label placebo, or so-called honest placebo, trial to date, starting with people who had IBS, including Buonanno. The findings were surprising. Nearly twice as many people in the trial who knowingly received placebo pills reported experiencing adequate symptom relief compared with the people who received no treatment. Not only that, but the men and women taking the placebo also doubled the rates of improvement to the point where that was about equal to the effects of 2 IBS medications that were commonly used at the time. I was entirely confused, says Ketchup. I had hoped it would happen, but it still defies common wisdom. Okay? So it's got imagery, and it goes on to describe what's going on a little bit more with their research. They're getting pills, right, given to them, and it actually says placebo on the pill, and the packaging says placebo on it as well. So these people are completely aware that what they are taking is just nonsense, right? It's nothing. But what's happening is the stuff is going away. Like all their ailments is going away. So this is like some revolutionary type of stuff. Even if you know that you're getting a placebo, it still has an effect on your system. Some crazy stuff going on here. Okay? All right, so that's our sentence context. Write a compound sentence, please. Make sure you got Coleman in your sentence. Once you're good with your sentence, go ahead and share it with the person in front, person behind you. Check for the conjunction that they used in their sentence, making sure that it is a compound sentence.
Did you actually people every day
See you, Austin.
Oh,
Celeste, what do you have?
I have the placebo pill doesn't have any active ingredients, but the pill fermented healing inpatient.
Very good, very good. Excellent. All right, let's go and put that off to the side. And Chris, take out a sheet of notebook paper for some notes. We're going to talk about 8 ethical guidelines real quick, and that's going to be it for today. So just a few minutes, and then we'll get to our Pictionary review game. Celeste, did you ever read the children's story about there's an elephant named Celeste? No? She civilizes all the other elephants. You never had it? It's a great story.
Another elephant story?
Yeah, that's
You read too
Celeste. Yeah, that's the one.
The one you read to me?
Yes, yes, that's it. That's it. That's a good one. You need to find this.
That's a good story.
It's a really Clayton liked it. All right. Yeah, 8 ethical guidelines. Okay, so we talked a lot about research over the past couple days. Talked about participant-related biases a little bit yesterday, things that we need to be aware of. As a researcher, you also need to be aware of these things so that you don't do something that you shouldn't do. Okay. So I want to talk about each one for just a moment. The first one, legality, kind of reminds me of the proposed experiment that I said the other day. Trying to figure out the effects of alcohol consumption on the American high school student. Drink, and then give you a test and see what happens. Of course, we can't do that because it's a violation of the law. Sound good? So you can't, just as a researcher, say, hey, I'm doing this for the good of science. I can circumvent the law here. Right? That is not justifiable. Sound good? So it's got to be legal. Number 2, it's got to be institutionally approved. So if I wanted to do research here at the high school, I'd have to go to the school board to get approval first before I could ever conduct my research here. There are other reasons why I can't do that, or I couldn't do it, and we'll get to those as well, but one is institutionally approval. The third one, informed consent. So this one has a little bit of a gray area, okay? If you're doing an experiment and you're exposing your subjects to certain types of independent variables of treatment, especially in the medical field, you gotta have informed consent. And then especially if you got minors involved, you need parental consent or guardian consent in order for them to participate. However, you got to think about other forms of research like naturalistic observation. Right? You're in a natural setting. Are you got to be able to get informed consent from everybody in that type of environment? No. Okay. Sometimes subjects will sometimes unknowingly give their consent. Like college campuses, like we referenced before. A lot of times within the first week that you're there on college campus, they'll give you a ton of paperwork, right? And a lot of it is like paying for your bills and stuff to sign up for classes. But sometimes they'll slip something in that you could be liable for research, right? In that mix, and so you end up signing your name. You could be a part of some type of research program there unknowingly. But they get your informed consent either way. Deception. With this one, deception, you can deceive your subjects in your research, but the rule is you can only deceive when necessary, or you can only deceive your subjects when you believe that their knowledge of what is going on is going to skew their behavior. Sound good? Right? So you can't just deceive just to deceive, right? You can only use it justifiably when you believe that their knowledge of your research is going to affect their behavior and then affect the outcome of your research. Okay? There's 4 of them. The other 4, the last 4. Debriefing, the 5th one. At the conclusion of your research, you must sit your subjects down and then debrief them or give them an overview of the purpose of your research, the objectives of your research, and the conclusions of the research. Sound good? You can't just let them go off on their own wherever they go. Sound good? I'll give you an example of the negatives of that happening. John B. Watson, a famous psychologist, behaviorist, he did a study on a little boy named Albert, right? And he was concerned about conditioning and emotions, affecting one's emotions and environment. So what he did was he brought the boy in, and then he would sit him down, and he would present the child with, I think it was a rat, and then he would sheet metal and hammer right behind his head, over and over again. Rat, boom, okay? And what happened was generalization took place, and the characteristics of the rat, which happened to be white, little Albert became afraid of anything that was white. So Watson's lab coat, Santa Claus's beard, right? So that's not normal behavior, right? So Watson had planned on reconditioning him to make him this abnormal behavior, make it become extinct, but it didn't happen. Little Albert went off on his wayside, someplace else, and there was no debriefing involved. So we got to assume that little Albert, had some issues, right? Anxiety, those type of things later on in life. So debriefing is really important. Number 5, 6, subordinates. Okay, so I said I'd have to get informed consent, but then I can't really do it in the first place because you would be my subordinates. I can't do that as a researcher. What could I hold over your head that would affect your behavior in research? I could say that if you don't do what I ask you to do, I'm going to give you a F. I'm going to give you a bad grade. Sound good? So that would skew the outcome of the research. Sound good? So just don't use subordinates in the research. Payment for participation, very similar idea. If I told you you can be a part of my research, I'll give you $100,000. It would change your motivation whenever you're doing that research, right? Change your behavior. Okay, so payment can't be excessive. Can't be excessive. And the last thing, publication. Even if you don't get the results that you want and you expect as a researcher, you're still encouraged, or you still need to publish the results in a professional journal, right? And the reason for that is so that other professional psychologists or professional researchers can look at what you've done and they can try to replicate and challenge the results that you have come up with. Think back on the subliminal messages that we looked at the other day. If we didn't have professional journals where that stuff was published, we would just all of a sudden think of that as being fact, and nothing would have been challenged there, right? So you need to publish in a professional journal. Anybody have any questions about those? I gave you a handout there. I want you to take a moment, read through those 3 scenarios. And I want you to think about, are these ethical or unethical? You kind of got a sliding scale there. Do this on your own for a second, and then we'll talk to our neighbor about what they think. Share our ideas.